All right, so we're going to look at this map of the Earth that is intended to represent a reflection of the moon, and I'll just share a few criticisms I have of it. First, let's assess the premise of the similarity of continent shape to the surface of the moon. There was this YouTube video, Moon's Transition to VOC Maps. Here's our subject, the moon, and here we'll proceed through the transforms. Second transform, third transform, fourth, fifth. Now this is the comparison of the two images. I can't say that things are looking very precise. I mean, there are similarities in the features, but it appears that there are some creative liberties concerning the actual topography. This here is Africa, and here it is reflected on the surface of the moon. Notice these areas of whiteness that goes through the continent. You don't really get those clues here. It's all solid land. And I'm looking for a coastline, one that would take us to this separation for Saudi Arabia, similarly shown here on this map. But with this moon topography, we're not really getting that correct shape. I just need to ensure we're not reaching in our interpretation of imagery. This does not really look like Africa. We can discuss other examples, but I just needed a single example to prove the point. So for this image, we're shown the partial, half, and full lunar eclipse. Looking at the full example, we have the explanation. Here, the full moon, Venus, and the sun are directly opposite each other on a line, and the Earth is between them. The total word I can't understand, but likely shadow of Venus is thrown on the full moon. So you see the sun here, you see Venus here. The sun is shining light on Venus. The shadow from Venus or other special chromatic frequencies from Venus reflect or overtake the frequencies of the moon, resulting in this image. Now, the problem I have with this idea is the celestial equator, the ecliptic, in determining what you would see looking where. We know that from our perspective, Venus is usually nearer to the sun, resulting in its appearance as a star visible in late evening, but not late in the night. Now, the one issue I have with this telling is that this would be considered a conjunction between Venus and the sun. So the expectation would be that whenever there's a Venus-Sun conjunction, there would be a lunar eclipse, or that for those instances where there are lunar eclipses, there has to be a conjunction at some point between Venus and the sun. Explained this way, it's allowed that you could have a Sun-Venus conjunction and no eclipse, but if the eclipse occurs, there should also be a conjunction. So I looked into the map of lunar eclipses. There were no total lunar eclipses in 2024, but some partial and penumbral. The website nakedeyeplanets.com shows us the dates for the inferior Venus conjunctions going back the last 10 years. An inferior conjunction is when Venus is in front of the sun from our vantage point, whereas superior conjunction is where Venus is the opposite of the sun from our vantage point, or you might say behind the sun. This image from the moon map depicts an inferior conjunction with Venus in front of the sun. Looking at the inferior conjunction dates, they do not seem to correspond with the lunar eclipse dates. For example, we have total lunar eclipses May and November of 2022, but from this calendar, the last one for that year was January 2022. There was a within a month correspondence for this year, March 2025, where you had your total lunar eclipse, March 13th, whereas the inferior conjunction occurred March 23rd. I also looked in the 2015 year, the 2017 year, to confirm no correspondence with inferior conjunctions of these years. There is also a very rare phenomena called a transit. A transit you can look at as being equivalent to a solar eclipse, but instead of the moon, Venus is the roaming body. In the traditional spherical Earth explanation, when the two planes of orbit, that of the moon and the sun, intersect midway, that's when the eclipse becomes possible. Those intersections are called the nodes. So Venus does the same, and it last occurred in the year 2004. But that Venus was so small as it crossed implies the traditional relative size cosmology where Earth and Venus are absolutely tiny compared to the sun. Of course, the other bodies appear spherical and even have moons visible through telescope, as to imply the solar system is as traditionally described or deceptively made to appear so, as a feature of the Matrix hologram. This video by Canary in a Coal Mine introduced this cosmological principle of the heavens manifesting as a projection from the magnetic core under the flat plane of the Earth, with rays we can't perceive going through the Earth to the dome ceiling, then reflecting off from the black hole sun to form the celestial bodies. and there's an explanation about how the phases of the moon are the creation of refraction of intersecting rays with the overtaking of the moon's rays by the sun's rays. This all sounds nice, but I just decided to look at it closely to see what could be clarified. At this point, 2 minutes 56 seconds into the video, there is an explanation of the angular relationship of Venus being 15 degrees west of the eclipsed sun during the April 8th total solar eclipse, being a hint to the mechanism by which the lunar eclipses occur. I think this may be a typo because April 8th was the solar eclipse, however it's written as lunar eclipse here. If there is a mechanism of a non-conjuncted, non-transiting Venus creating either the lunar or solar eclipse, then I would just say that the mechanism isn't immediately intuitively obvious. So whatever degree calculation in relation to the sun that's determined should be consistent for various lunar eclipses. In part 10 of the series, The Sun is a Refraction, there is this explanation.
Easily explained by a refraction artifact. The secondary refraction is a much weaker ray, which is why it's not as bright. Starting to make sense. Do you see it? The sun is a refraction. The second sun is a refraction. The moon is a refraction.
So I have a little bit of an issue with this explanation. In a video I uploaded 7 years ago, uncovering an ancient astrological mystery, the Ferrocell blood moon anomaly, I show that when you put a Ferrocell lens in front of a videocam lens, you'll get this secondary image that appears here. So you can see the image moving around as I move around the lens. And so the issue I have is if the angle of the Ferrocell lens affects the location of the secondary image, it becomes more difficult for me to conclude that this secondary refracted image is something that exists independently in the environment and is not created by the camera equipment that's used. The mystery of the glyph at the center of the channel avatar is that this image is not of a crescent moon. It actually does relate to the solar eclipse. It is in fact a lens flare resultant image that appeared during the 2017 solar eclipse. This shown as an image in full spectrum. I was only able to get these secondary images with one type of video camera. So as a result of this, I'm just a bit more skeptical about these potential lens flare reflections. I think it's important to keep an open mind about the possibility of these alternative cosmologies explaining our reality. But I try to find consistency in shaping my own beliefs about things. I have a belief that you can alter the lengths of your fingertips with your thoughts in a visible and recordable way. That belief has developed through repeated experimentation with results that remain consistent even to the present day. There may be some quantum physics-based explanation about how matter can change to a degree in relation to the imaginations of the observer, but the same rigor in which one tries to observe consistency with these measurements applies to the analysis of these alternative cosmologies in determining the strength of one's belief. I thank you for watching. If you found this information fascinating, then perhaps you were among the chosen. Peace.